there is a desire to see a refounding. People are looking for order. People are looking for something to give them a sense that the world makes sense. And the one thing that makes you feel like the world makes sense is war. That is the one thing that you can easily not even conscious. Like if it comes about, then it gives directionality to our nations. It gives directionality to our people. People that are lazy and lost and wandering all of a sudden are motivated and directed. And so there is in the culture, in the zeitgeist, there is a yearning for war. You can feel it. It's crazy. I mean, in the 1980s and 90s, we did everything possible to avoid nuclear war, right? It was like that was motivating everything. Now we act as if Russia, for example, doesn't even have nukes. We just kind of act as if this is, and we almost act as if there's an inevitable like nuclear war in the future, folks. Like just get used to that. Get used to the idea that at some point there's going to be some kind of nuclear exchange. There's a weird like yearning to see the world kind of burn so that we can find a new beginning. And that is a frightening thing to notice. Like it's a frightening thing to see in the media, in the political class, but even in normal people, like this kind of, yeah, this desire for a new sacrifice that will give us a new beginning.
Gosh, Jonathan, there's like a million directions I want to go with that because so much is coming to mind. Because
I don't
look,
think I've ever talked about that specifically, or have I?
yeah,
Anyways, you got
yeah,
me on it. You got me on stuff that I usually keep for myself.
yeah. No, I keep it coming. So this is the thing. This is one of the remarkable things about Christ as the eternal sacrifice, because there's something about Christ on the cross as this sort of lamb slain before the foundation of the world that it's not like you might be able to articulate this better than me, but there's something in the zeitgeist that is satisfied if you just keep if that is at your focus, if you know what I mean. If you get rid of Christ on the cross, your society is left wandering and figuring out, okay, we need a sacrifice, we need a scapegoat, right? We need something. There's like a bloodlust for sacrifice, whether that be child sacrifice, whatever it is. That, like you mentioned, there's something there driving it, and it feels inevitable. Like I agree with you. Like I'm seeing the stuff on my social media, and like despite me trying to show with restraint when I'm trying to post stuff, it just seems to be inevitable. Like it's just adding to this tapestry that kind of runs away from you. You know, it's out of our control almost. It feels like.
Yeah, and I do think that, I mean, obviously I'm a Christian. I do think that Christ is the answer. I think that because one of the things that it's hard for people to understand, like people, I think we now in a moment where people can understand a little more this desire for sacrifice. Because we, like you said, we're seeing it kind of coming about in the way that we either whichever side of the war we're on, like either in Russia or in the Israel Palestine, or like all these wars, it doesn't even matter what side you're on, but you can kind of see this, like you said, this bloodlust to see it, to see something happen in order to stabilize the world. and and we have a weird intuition that that violence is part of that stabilization. Of course, Rene Girard has analyzed this as a sociologist, and there are different people that have analyzed it in different ways. But what the cross does, in some ways, it reminds us. That in some ways we have to offer ourselves up as sacrifices, and that is actually the best way for the sacrifice to happen. And that if people offer themselves up as the sacrifice, then it diffuses the tension, right? It actually diffuses the opposition in a conflict. It's hard because who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. You know, there's a crazy story about how the Roman games ended, about how the gladiatorial fights ended. Because when people converted to Christianity, you know, for a while, those games continued. Like people were converting, and there was still, you know, it's hard to stop something once it's part of society. And the way, at least according to our tradition, the way it stopped is that one day a Christian went down into the arena and stood between the two gladiators, and then the gladiator killed the person, and the person died and became, in some ways, a martyr, and everybody in the audience saw it, and they just walked out, and that was it. That was the end of the games, because someone was willing to put their life on the line in order to stop, but not in a way that was self-sacrificial. So obviously we don't need to do all crazy things like that. In some ways it's the opposite of a it's funny because it's the opposite of a Muslim martyr, right? It's like
Exactly.
it's
I've
like
always talked about this.
you're
Yeah.
not going in to suicide bomb yourself to like destroy as much as possible. You're going in and offering yourself in a situation of conflict as a kind of intermediate, someone willing to give themselves to atone for the animosity between the two sides.
Yeah.
Um,
But also,
and
as a way of transforming what suffering even means. So if you look at like St. Ignatius of Antioch and his willingness to be ground into the flour, the wheat of Christ through the jaws of the lions, it's remarkable to read those letters from St. Ignatius. And there is something transformative about willing self-sacrifice that just transcends everything. And I think
and
Tertullian,
then
yeah.
like I think that for us, we don't obviously need to do that. I mean, most of us are not called to do something as extreme, but it does remind you that, in fact, one of the things that you can do to refound a world is to give yourself to that world. So it means to your family, it means to your community, it means to your church. It's like those are things that actually do stabilize the world. We don't necessarily have the power individually, maybe some of us do, but very few of us, to stabilize an entire geopolitical conflict. But we definitely do have the power to stabilize and to found little stories that we participate in. And that has a cumulative effect,